Enthusiastic, encouraging and experienced are three words that sum up my teaching style. My name is Jenny Rose and I'm a freelance tutor and I live in Manchester. I qualified with KPMG in 2008 and since then I've been exposed to lots of different styles of teaching. Started off in the learning and development team in KPMG and then I moved through to working with the universities of Manchester and Sheffield, delivering their bespoke training that I wrote, and also marking or tutoring with iCount and Kaplan and BPP. I want to share with you some of the quotes my students have said about me. First of all, interactive and fun. I think this is really important to interact with the students, to know where they're at with their learning and to understand where they're coming from. So interaction is absolutely key to all of my lectures. Innovative and creative. I want to use the best techniques to get my message across. So I use innovative examples and creative ways of getting the message across using prompts or flip charts or PowerPoints, whatever's most suitable for that situation. Definitely memorable with great examples. Had to make sure it was memorable for the right reasons, but the boy who said that said it was memorable. Engaging and accessible for everyone. I think it's important that people to understand that people might not have a lot of knowledge of auditing or accounting at this point in their career. So making it accessible for absolutely everyone is so important. And entertaining and practical. I don't set out to be entertaining, but I think if students are entertained and they can see how the material relates to their practical experience, they will learn much more. When I'm teaching, my focus is on bringing the material alive. And through this I'm able to inspire and motivate students to learn. I can help them with their exam practice and in writing down their knowledge in a succinct and clear way, and also teach them the professional skills they need throughout their professional life, because after all, we're teaching the leaders of the future. Anyway, this is me in action talking about audit risk and audit materiality, so that you can see my enthusiasm, how I'm encouraging, and some of my more experienced lectures. Thanks very much. Audit risk and audit materiality are two subjects we're going to talk about today. So auditing is quite a risky business, and us as auditors are trying to lower that risk to an acceptable level. We can never eliminate it because we can never test everything, and there's quite a lot of limitations of auditing that we've already talked about. But we do want to reduce that audit risk to an acceptable level for us as auditors. And it's quite difficult to get that judgment right, and that's why we need professional judgment in our work as auditors. So, audit risk is defined as inappropriate opinion when the financial statements are materially misstated. That's from ISO 200. So it's the inappropriate, we're giving the wrong opinion. The financial statements have a material error or omission in them, and we've given an opinion saying that they're true and fair. So the risk is that we get our opinion wrong. And if we get our opinion wrong, as we talked about, we can get sued, we can lose our reputation, we can lose our clients, and so on and so on. So it's very important we get that opinion right. So we reduce audit risk, the risk of getting the wrong opinion when we've got an error or an omission in those financial statements. Here's my financial statements here. We don't want any errors or omissions, material errors or omissions. So there's a little formula for those of you that like maths, like myself. I did a maths degree, so I do like the occasional formula. Audit risk has three components. Inherent risk times control risk times detection risk. So audit risk is inherent risk times control risk times detection risk. And to break these three down for you, I've got a great example. So it's been very stormy recently. Can anyone tell me how I might stop these financial statements getting wet? Umbrella, very good. And here I have an umbrella to protect these financial statements. So if we didn't have an umbrella here, and it was raining, these financial statements will get wet. This rain represents our inherent risk. So we've got lots of clouds, lots of rain, lots of errors. We've got high inherent risk. What we can do to stop these errors hitting the financial statements, put a nice brolly over them. So the brolly represents our control risk. So our rain comes down, but the errors don't hit the financial statements, they're going round and right onto my feet. So the brolly protects these financial statements from the errors that might fall. The brollies are our controls and our systems in place and our processes. Sometimes though, controls are broken, they're not working correctly. So even though we might think they're there, actually, the errors can get through the controls and hit the financial statements. And it's this hitting the financial statements that we want to avoid. We want to avoid the big material errors in here. So they might be broken, or they might not be fully effective. So what if we get sideways rain? The body's not going to help us then. So our water, our rain coming down from the sky, that's our inherent risk. The brolly, that's our control risk, protecting the financial statements, but they still might get wet with errors. And this brings on to our last part, our detection risk. And what we do as auditors is we do tests focusing on those riskiest areas, the places where I think we're most likely to get the rain, most likely to get the errors, to protect these from the rain. So now, the rain, the errors come down. The controls do offer some protection, but if they go past the controls, they're hopefully going to hit our cups, and that means our financial statements are protected from material errors. So the higher inherent risk means the more rain. So more inherently risky areas would be things like high-risk businesses or complex transactions. More rain, more likely to be errors. We need better controls, or if we don't have as good controls, we need to do more testing. So that's our audit risk. Inherent risk of the rain falling down, the control risk of the umbrella, which may or may not be working properly, and the detection risk is our cups placed on our financial statement. Any questions about that? Okay, let's talk about materiality. So if we're thinking about these errors hitting the financial statements, if an error dropped on and it just, all it hit was got a little note at the back about prepayments, and it was £10 different, and it said the turnover here is 2 million. Not bothered. It's a tiny, tiny error. So we don't mind about an error hitting that because it's not a very big error. How about if the error hit the profit, knocked off, or added on a zero? How about added on a zero? So instead of J-Row Fashion making £150,000 profit, it was at 1,500. Then we'd have a problem. And that's a decision that would affect the users of the financial statements. So if we think changing a number in here would affect the users, might affect the decision they were making about investing, then we'd need to be aware of that, and that would be a material error. So think about what affects the users. Another thing that might affect the users, there's a great note in here called, I love this note, it's called Directors' Remuneration. And it says what the directors of this company get paid. I always find this the best one to audit, because it's really interesting. What if the error took off a few zeros? So it looked like the directors would get remunerated that highly, say if the company wasn't doing very well. That would be an issue for me. So materiality could be one number when we're looking at the profit and loss statement. It might be quite a high number, but when it comes to directors' emoluments, we might have to be looking at a much smaller number. A much smaller error might affect me as a user. Another thing, what if the rain landed and scrubbed out a note on contingent liability? So I wasn't aware that the company was being sued for £20 billion after the year end. I'd be a bit upset about that. So when you think about materiality, there's two aspects we need to consider. quantitative aspect, so the size, so big errors in the profit and loss account, and even small errors in the directors and money, and qualitative nature. So if we had a contingent liability not been explained, that is a material error or omission, even though it's not got necessarily a number on it. Any questions about materiality? So audit risk is when we give an inappropriate opinion on the financial statements, when they're materially misstated. And when we're talking about materiality, we're talking about quantitative and qualitative criteria. It'll be different for every company depending on how big the company is. But we're talking about quantitative, so the money, how big is it, and qualitative, the nature of the error. The wrong opinion when the financial statements are materially misstated. And audit risk, remember our audit risk model. We've got the inherent risk of our rain coming down, the errors coming down hitting the financial statements. We've got our control risk protecting the financial statements, and our auditor's detection risk, protecting these financial statements from errors or omission. So reducing our audit risk to an acceptably low level. Thank you very much.